Hello there, I'm Zach, and today I'll be showing you how I do it. This video is not made for kids. I'll be showing dangerous and toxic materials that are potentially hazardous. Children should not have access to this, and please take the proper safety requirements when replicating this process. Miniature modeling and filming has been my passion in life. I'm not the best though, but I'm always improving, so let's dive into it. If you were ever going to ask me what my favorite episode from the show was, then I'll tell you Horrid Lorries. This is my favorite episode from Thomas and Friends because its story plot and the iconic role of Lorry's play in, especially the crashes. And I also love that one-liner Thomas had at the end.
Well, the Brothers Grimm smashed, broken and sunk.
Classic Thomas at his finest, which is what I wanted to bring back into my videos with the Horrid Lorries. Tinkercad, which is a basic 3D design software that allows a user to have easy access and control over what they're building, using the template and the basic 3D designs that are already made, so they can be altered and changed in size. I decided to start work on the chassis first, to give me an idea on how big the lorry was actually going to be. Getting a rough estimate on how big it was, I began designing the back of the lorry, stretching our block across the chassis, copying down the measurements. I opened a new tab and began designing the tray of the lorry. Hollow blocks were used to cut out the block, while using the template to make sure it was evenly centered within the model. This was also useful when it came down to doing the indents along the side of the lorry, as I didn't want to go straight through or make it too thin. To duplicate objects, you select the object you want, go to the corner and click on the clipboard in the corner. After finishing with the indents, I downloaded the model, then uploaded it to a new document. This is so the document doesn't look too busy when I do other adjustments to the model. The wheel arches came next. This took a bit of time to get right, as it had to perfectly fit onto the chassis, as well as have enough room for wheels. When replicating something onto the other side of a model, duplication comes quite in handy, as all you need to do is get onto one side of the model you're duplicating, in particular, the side you're not trying to replicate, as then you can just drag one end over. Then it requires little alterations to make it look right. The front of the lorry, the cab, had an unusual curve to it, so scrolling through the pre-made blocks I soon found this thing, to get the slight curved angle of the lorry's cab. After cutting away, I test fitted the cab. It all looked apart, but something didn't look right. But I didn't alter this until after I did the windows. In each corner of the windows, I placed a circle to give it more of a smoother edge. To make sure the windows were even, I placed a block underneath them to make sure I don't make them uneven. But because of the odd angles of the window, it took a few blocks of various size to fully cut out the window. The side windows follow suit, but to get the final curved edge I needed, I downloaded the file. Then I opened a new tab and hit import. After selecting and importing, using hollow blocks, I cut out the part I was going to be needing, which was just a small piece of the front. Importing and clicking onto its icon settings, I changed it to a hole and dragged it into place. At that point, the inaccuracies I saw earlier began to annoy me, so I made the cab taller and extended the tray. I added the front details to the cab with the help of the snap grid, which controls how much grip you have on your model when moving around. Working on the grille outline, it revealed how short the cab was, so I extended the cab a bit more. After removing excess parts from the grille outline, I cut out holes for the headlights. But before doing anything else to the headlight, I decided to make the grille. In the show, this was a separately fitted piece, which can be switched out for a lorry's face. This is because after their debut episode, they were used as background props. I thought it would be best to print it separately, So I copied the measurements of the whole blocks that I used to cut away the excess. Using the template, I was able to find the center of the grill, so I can evenly add the indents for the radiator. For the radiator's texture, I just added long strips of hollow blocks. This took a little bit to get right. I'm quite happy with the end result, but with the exception of a radiator cap. Back to the cab, I began designing the roof, which wasn't easy because of the odd shape it was. It took a few attempts, but I soon got it right. This was swiftly added to the model. With the top of the model done, I moved on to the side details. The fuel tank was first, which was easy and simple to make, as it only required 2 braces, a fuel cap, and smooth edgings. Making a toolbox, then placing everything together, revealed that I had to alter the chassis. This also included drilling out holes for the wheels. This also gave me an estimate on how big the wheels should be. Now, I did try and design my own wheels, but they were not looking good. So I decided that I would borrow one from Fingergives. After I found a pair that I was happy with, I scaled them down to size. While test fitting my wheels, I noticed I forgot to do the headlights, so I quickly went back and filled them in. To make the headlights stand out more, I gave them a spare indent instead of just being flat. Back to the chassis, I opened up the chassis, which also meant I had to add those humps underneath the wheels, so that the plastic underneath the wheels aren't too thin. With all the 3D designing done, it was time to print. Now, if you remember from my post-van video, my school gave me the keys to the resin printer, but I was only able to print one of each model. The post-van was first to be printed out, and it came out fine. The Lorry, on the other hand, did not. The top printed fine, but the chassis was warped, so was the tire and the grille. Everything else did not survive. Thankfully, I was able to reprint, but the same result, with the same warping problem, so I reprinted again. Thankfully, this one came out good, with no warping and with all the parts, except the toolbox. The top of the model did not come out well. It had support residue and many rough edges, so I used one of the previous ones that came out fine, but still, I had to sand it, along with every single part. Applying a little bit of acrylic paint to the model while sanding also reveals any imperfections. This made it a bit easier to see where I missed. The first coat of primer then went on, and yes, I do know that I should have something underneath my model when painting, so that dirt doesn't come on the model. I was just a little busy that day. Thankfully, no dirt was thrown onto my model, but it kinda looked like it, as the back of the lorry needed a lot more sanding. So another round of sanding and adding acrylic got the model smooth and ready for its first paint of red. Originally I was meant to use the same red as the post van, but I didn't read the label, and you know what happened. So a week later, I got a new red, one I actually read. A Tamiya Spray TS39. That worked great. I came to notice how much I hated the wheels, as they were a little bit warped. So I tried printing out new ones on my printer at home, which came out pretty good. It just needed sanding, priming, and a bit of red. They looked much better than the ones before. Now that the red was done, I moved on to painting the black details. Using a small paintbrush and the God paint, I was able to carefully paint all the details. But whenever I made a mistake, I used a wet wipe to wipe it away. Wait a few minutes, then retry. When I was done with the black, I didn't like how dry the inside of the tray was, so I mixed some paints together and painted the inside of the tray, giving it more vibrant and depth to it. Painting the headlights and door handles, and printing out toolboxes and painting them, I was ready to put everything together. For connecting the wheels together, I applied the same technique I used for the postman, but this time sourcing the wire from old customs I made, but they were a bit too long, so I cut them in half and cut them down to size, then connected them with the brass. Gluing the tires on, and the chassis was too short, as it wasn't allowing the wheels to move. nor did it sit right. I wasn't annoyed, as designing anything in a 3D software is like going in blind, especially when printing it. Though it did look right in Tinkercad, the actual performance in real life is different. But thankfully, there's something called bolster wood to give it the extra height it needs. A little bit of black paint and a tiny bit of glue to glue everything together. It was really coming along, but there was one thing missing: the license plate. To save time, I used the cardboard that I placed underneath the wheels when painting them, added a black square to them, then got out my dry transfers, which only requires to be cut out, placed on the target surface, then get rubbed in with a pencil. With that little part done, this guy was finished. Oh yeah. Well, remember when I had those two misprints? The top of them were all fine, it's just the chassis. But after a closer inspection, I found out that they just need a bit of drilling and they'll be fine, because the sides will be covered up by the wheels and all the other props. And after how well the wheels turned out when I reprinted them, I decided to print out the rest of the parts for them, which means I was doing a lot more sanding. Lots of sanding. While sanding, I suffered, after priming it, a resin crack, which was fixed with glue and a bit of filler, with a lot more filler being used on the roof. Once they were dealt with and another coat of primer, they were all caught up with the red. My desk was very busy that day painting them all, but definitely worth it. They both follow the same process when connecting the wheels and the upgrades to the chassis, along with the license plates, which also hides the deformity of the chassis, which just shows you that a misprint can still work with some creativity.